WiRED friends, it's Shelly coming to you from one of my places where I find a little bit of peace and quiet, especially in the anxious times that we're in. Before we move into the month of November, I wanted to spend some time recapping what we've been learning about in September and October. We've been working through a series called Faith in an Anxious World, looking at how faith impacts our anxiety and how anxiety might impact our faith. We know that there's a lot of craziness going on with the election and with COVID yet. Cases are rising. And so we know that the world isn't getting any less anxious. Maybe you're struggling or you're kind of trying to figure out how school's going or what sports team or activities you're going to be able to be involved in coming up. So there's a lot of things on our mind. So let's recap. When we're feeling anxious or worried, what are some of those things that we can do to help us? So we talked about 3 phrases: look up, look inside, and look around. First, we talked about look up. We observed the story of Jesus walking on water when the disciples were in the boat in the middle of this terrible storm. You'll see the water is quite calm behind me now, but this was not the case in the storm that the disciples were in. They were in this boat, and then they see this figure on the water, and they don't recognize the figure, and that person ends up being Jesus. Jesus was near the disciples in the midst of their chaos, even though they didn't recognize him. And Jesus steps into the boat. He doesn't calm the storm and then step into the boat, but Jesus steps into the boat while it is rocking back and forth and the disciples are fearful. And then we see Jesus calming the storm. So there's a couple things that we can remember when our life is feeling a little bit unsteady. We can remember that Jesus is always around, that God is always near, even when we don't recognize it. Even when we don't feel his presence, God is still near. So friend, know that God sees and is close to you in the times when you are feeling worried and anxious. The second phrase we looked at was look inside. This is important because we're all unique and we're all different. God created us and wired us all differently. So what causes you anxiety might be different than what causes me anxiety or worry. So it's important for us to recognize what are those situations or those triggers that kind of start to stir or cause that anxiety within us. And then second, what are those coping tools that can help us? When we talk about anxiety is a healthy thing. It's a tool that God gives us to help protect us when we're crossing a road or we're taking a test. That anxiety kind of cues us like, hey, maybe you need to study, or hey, you need to look both ways before you cross the road. But the problem becomes when that alarm becomes something that doesn't turn off. You can't shut it off, and you're constantly thinking over and over and over, and that worry just continues to stir and build inside until maybe you're experiencing a difficult time breathing, or that pit in your stomach, or maybe you're feeling like a headache or a stomach ache. So when we start to feel anxiety that's intense like that, we really need to take a look at what's inside. What are some of those triggers that we're experiencing, and what might God be trying to tell us through those triggers, through that anxiety? Is it maybe that we've forgotten who we are? Maybe we're anxious about friendships or relationships or family situations, and we need to remember that our identity is in Christ, that we belong, that we're loved, that we're forgiven, that we're accepted. And then we also need to take a look at some of the maybe other reasons. Maybe it's sleep. Maybe our body's trying to tell us we need more sleep, or we need to eat healthier, or we need to turn screens off. We need to shut off the social media, or maybe we need to change the people that we're hanging around. Then we talked about what are some of those tools. When we identify what those triggers are, what are the tools that we can use to help us to help us kind of steady our boat, steady our worlds. And that's going to be different for you and for me. I enjoy sitting outside in nature. It's relaxing and calming for me. That's one of the things that I can do to kind of lower my blood pressure or calm down and when I'm feeling anxious. Might be different for you. Maybe it's breathing techniques. We talked about some different strategies, some different breathing techniques. We talked about the daily examine prayer, a way to reflect on your day. We talked about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, looking at 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 positive comment about yourself. Maybe you need to role play kind of a movie. You just need to play the scene out in your head. Like how is this going to end? Looking at kind of all the different options, and is this going to be as a big a deal as maybe you're kind of first thinking that it is? Maybe it's listening to music or going for a walk or exercising. If you need more help or more ideas on how to use what some of these tools might be, come talk to me or your D group leader, as we have a list of resources for you. Third, we talked about look around. So we look up first and we fix our eyes on Jesus. 2, we look inside, recognize our how anxiety is affecting us and what tools we can use. And then 3, we want to look around. Who are the people that we are surrounding ourselves with? The world continues to be a crazy and anxious place with the election, with COVID. But we turned in scripture and we looked at the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000 and how the disciples were given this huge task of feeding 5,000 people, and they freaked out. And they're like, how are we supposed to do this? And Jesus just very calmly gives them step-by-step instructions of what to do next. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt frozen and just not sure of what to do next? We can learn from Jesus and his disciples a little bit in this scenario. Jesus tells his disciples, go find the food that you have. And the disciples bring back 5 loaves and 2 fish. And then he tells them, okay, next, go organize the people, have them sit down in groups. And they do that. And then third, we see Jesus pray and give thanks for the food that they have, for these 5 loaves and 2 fish. Not asking for it to be multiplied, but just thanking God for what they currently had. So who are those adults in your life? Who are those people you can turn to? When you're feeling frozen and you're in that moment, do you have this tendency to maybe go to social media or to go find a friend, to find somebody that's in a similar situation that can kind of relate to the pain and the struggle that you're going through? I know I do. It's an easy temptation, but because we like to have others kind of join us in some of that, maybe sometimes some of that pain or that misery. But when we look around to people that are maybe a little bit ahead of us in their walk, that have a little bit more wisdom or an outside view of what's going on, those people can can give us some direction in maybe what those next steps are to take. So it's my hope that you have those adults in your life. I want to remind you that you have a great D group leader. And if you're just visiting and you would like to be connected to adult, please contact us, and we'd like to get you connected with the D group leader. But maybe it's also your parents or a coach or a teacher at school. Finding people that have a little bit more wisdom and a little more perspective outside of what you're currently dealing with can help, as they can give you just a next step. What's a next step to move you when you're feeling frozen? So just a reminder again, the 3 things that we can do when we're feeling anxious is look up. We want to fix our eyes on Jesus. We want to remember that God is sovereign. All of this craziness in this world, elections and COVID and your friend drama at school. God knows it all, and He is right there with you in the midst of it. Promises not to leave you. So recognize that God is by your side. And then 2, look inside. Learn a little bit more about yourself. What and how God wires you. What are some of those triggers? What are some of those anxieties that kind of continue to repeat and build up in your life? And then what are the tools that you can learn so that as those things start to build up, you can recognize those and use those tools to help you steady your boat, steady your life. And then 3, who are the people around you? Who are the people that can encourage you in your faith? Who can encourage you in your walk of life? Who can encourage you during those moments when you're just frozen and you're not quite sure what the next things to do is? So look up, look inside, and look around. I pray that this series has been a blessing to you. There's so much more that we could have unpacked over the last couple months. And again, this could be something that you're struggling with, or maybe not. And maybe part of the look around is if you're not struggling with anxiety, chances are there's probably somebody close to you that is. So how can you come around and support your friends or your family or those that are around you that may be struggling? Next month, I'm super excited for our new series called Verses. Have you ever wondered how we're supposed to get along as Christians when we disagree about things? From funny things to like Michigan versus Michigan State, or Coke or Pepsi, or Apple or Android. Like there's always seems to be kind of 2 sides to things, right? Maybe it's 2 sides to an argument that you and your friend are having, or maybe it's something between you and your parents. Maybe it's something really hard like the election right now. How do we as Christians get along, have discussions with each other? How do we argue in a healthy way? So that's what we're going to be taking a look at in the month of November. We also have some fun things planned. We're going to be doing a challenge, a Friendsgiving challenge. Think of it as a little bit of Ding Dong Ditch. So there's going to be, you may find a package showing up at your door. So stay tuned for some more fun and exciting things about that. Have your parents check their emails. If you're on social media, you can find us on Instagram, wired.roots, and also on Snapchat, wired.roots. So until then, look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great week. Bye.